And we are live. David, how are you today?
Yeah, good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Got my Sprite hat on, getting ready for. I think I'm like living for warm weather. I think Sprite's a great thing to drink in warm weather when you're like out and about. But it's getting cold up here, so I live like in the northern part of the United States, and we're starting to hit the 60s again, and it
Uh-huh.
sucks. It sucks. Summer was too short lived, and I didn't take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah, you should get this sponsored by Sprite.
I th- I think it's
That would be
for
great,
spon
actually.
if we could get if we could get someone in the Zcash community to throw a couple $100 to the donations wallet, I would be over the moon for like 2 weeks. So that's kind of like the extent of sponsorships I would be hoping for in like the next 4 months.
Right. Yeah,
It'd be
that
a
would
ton
be
of fun.
hilarious. ZecHub featuring Sprite or sponsored by Sprite. That would be
Sponsored by
pretty
like some mainstream thing. We
fun.
should
Yeah.
get we should make the podcast super toxic and like meme material and get sponsored by like an exchange, but not like a
Right.
big exchange, like some like really small exchange in
Yeah,
like
yeah.
some country we've never heard of.
The smallest, most degen exchange possible.
Get sponsored in their tokens, like a dog token.
Right.
Oh, the future. We'll see what the future holds. I don't know. We still have to do. I still have to work on a few things. Yeah, to get all that published. We're gonna try to do sponsorships in
Right.
like this season two, like October to December. We're gonna open that up and see if anyone's interested in doing that.
Yeah. Maybe Gemini.
I'll have Zuko put in a word.
Yeah.
I'm Zuko put in a word. Well, awesome. Thanks for joining today. I think it's always good. Like you and I know each other. I think a lot of people in the Zcash community know both of us, but believe it or not, I think this podcast actually reaches outside of the Zcash community and gets into other adjacent crypto ecosystems. So if you don't
Mm.
mind, just like for this first little bit here, like just an introduction on yourself, what you've been working on, and
Mm-hmm.
what made this conversation come together.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that it gets outside of this ecosystem. Um, so I'm David. I'm part of Zcash Media, which is kind of like a new sort of entity or like group of people in the Zcash ecosystem that started um, like joined Zcash, learned about it like last year, um, and we're essentially like making educational videos for Zcash because we really believe in like trying to provide better user education and opening up Zcash to like a more general audience. Because like when we first found out about Zcash, we were like, this is obviously like very necessary for making cryptocurrency um, like for normal use. Like I was just thinking like, you have Bitcoin and Ethereum, and obviously Bitcoin's done super well. We could talk a bit more about that later. But like it's kind of done well within its own like bubble. It's not like my mom or anybody is using Bitcoin at the gas station. And I'm like, okay, so this is obviously something that's like a multi-year, decadal process until it becomes like normal usage. What's the thing that like who are the people working on making it so that years from now it's actually gonna do what it promises and become like a global currency. And I was like, privacy, it's just like I just imagine like somebody I care about going to pay at the grocery store or gas station and paying with Bitcoin or whatever token, and then that person on the other side of the counter being able to just look up anything that they own, how much money they have on them, like right there in that wallet, as well as any other wallets they've interacted with, and like, oh, that's their, main stash, but this wallet has that much, and it's just like, it's just very unsafe. And so I was like, I would never recommend like my mom or whatever to use Bitcoin at a gas station. And I was just like, yeah, privacy is the only way it's going to work. And so we're interested in supporting the thing that's actually doing that in the most like sound way, like actually private, not just like some sort of, slight privacy. It's like a real 100% encryption, and just very attracted to like um, the sort of like this is the solution. Zero knowledge proofs had to be like brought from the academic lab into actual production, and they're like the first time they were ever used, and there's like magical technique that allows you to prove stuff without revealing the information, and it solves Bitcoin's privacy problem, and it has all these potential benefits down the road and sets the like base layer for the future of how like normal things can go. We're just like, this is obviously um, it's a more future proof like thing, so why not get in early and try and like help it along, bring our skill set. So like I'm a scientist at UCLA. I study Alzheimer's disease. Um, like I do electron microscopy, trying to determine like atomic structures and stuff. So I'm like very familiar with highly technical things, and I really like trying to break those things down to explain to anybody, like my family or anybody I come across. I feel like anybody should be able to at least understand the logic and the sort of implications. Like nothing's too technical that it can't be explained to people, and I think that's good for our society to like explain things to people and not just keep things siloed. And then Natasha and Jeff, who are 37 Lanes, which is a film production company. Um, we're all in the same friend group, and they have like the storytelling side of things. They've made like short films, they've done commercials, they've done product work. They have all the camera gear, all this infrastructure, business infrastructure experience built out, and we were just wanted to help contribute to Zcash. So we kind of combined like my interest in crypto and kind of future technologies and trying to make sure we like go in the right direction in society, and my like interest in communicating complex things to making them understandable to anybody. It's like fun for me with like their interest in using the medium of film, which is like one of the most powerful communications. And our whole ZCon talk was about how storytelling and media is actually one of our most powerful technologies. It allows us to communicate things through time and space, yada yada. So we just kind of combine forces to try and bring this idea and mission of Zcash and help it kind of reach a more general audience. So we came along last August. I saw the ZCon 2 presentation of ZOMG with Michelle and Chris and uh, Holmes and Hudson, and they were talking about the things they're interested in funding. And then I saw that not only does Zcash have this encryption and its privacy, and it's like good for individuals and society, but they also have this sustainable funding mechanism. And I thought that was really attractive, because I think a lot about things in biology where you know feedback loops are very important, and I thought that was a really great feedback loop where like people can get funding to work on things to make Zcash better, and if Zcash gets better and more adopted, then there's more funding available for people to work on things to make Zcash good, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was also like really adds to the future proof like thing about Zcash. Like if you're going to join a project, good to make sure that it's like got legs and is going to be around for the long haul.
Yeah.
So we were attracted to that sustainability approach and applied for a grant, and um, we set out to make some educational videos, and it evolved over time. It turned out to be, I mean, it's just so difficult to get up to speed and like decide how to make the videos, and we wound up putting out two videos, which you can see on our YouTube channel. Just type in Zcash Media. It wasn't even called Zcash Media at the beginning. That was a later addition through discussion with the community. Um,
What was it
And
originally
yeah,
called?
it didn't have a name. Yeah, it was just because originally we got funding just to make some videos, right? Like go around, interview people, use your skills, try and communicate Zcash. And then as time went on, we were like, okay, where are we going to put these things? And we felt that we wanted to put it on like our own YouTube channel to kind of like have it be curated and also like add to the channels that already exist. So not everything has to be on ECC or ZF, like now
Yeah.
that you're doing. It'd be good to have like more and more channels. So yeah, it wasn't really called anything until yeah, we were thinking like Zcash TV, like whatever Zcash something something, and Zcash Media was just the most like encompassing because media is it's a bit more of like an artistic cool term than Zcash TV. So
Yeah. And then
that's
media that like allows you to expand, right? Like you can have the organization right now focusing on film and documentaries, but it kind of gives you that thing that can allow you to like branch out to other areas potentially in like the next 5 to 10 years. I don't know what the roadmap is for you guys, but
yeah,
in the off chance that that's a thing, no, I like Zcash TV is pretty cool too. I wonder if someone
yeah,
could
yeah. I was a big proponent of having. I don't know if it was Zcash TV, but I liked having a little old TV with antennas as part of our
mm,
logo.
yeah.
Um, but I didn't win that battle,
Well,
probably for a good
I
reason.
I think the logo's fire. So I think like the branding and everything you guys have done has been like it's been really good. And like you said earlier, like I'm glad that those conversations in the community happen because one thing that I'm a big proponent of, obviously I work at ECC, but I think it's really important to have like I want someone in the community to like fork ZecHub because all the stuff is in GitHub. You can just like copy and paste it somewhere and then
Right,
just steal it and then not steal it but like fork it and then go do if they think they like if someone thinks they can do it better like it's a free market, right? Like go do it better and be better because that's good for Zcash and that's good for Zach and that's good for everyone in the community. So I
right,
think
yeah,
the extra channel is like really important to that aspect.
yeah, definitely. I think there should be like 10, 20, 30 different Zcash kind of like media or whatever, like offshoots, each person and feeding off each other. Like I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really important. Like we're doing now, like um, kind of creating like a mesh network with this cross pollination effect where people create one thing and then that inspires others, and it's not just like, and it's also like you said, everybody's free to contribute. They can do their own thing, um, and that way it's like no no one person is to blame if like um, it's not like, oh, Zcash has no marketing or Zcash has no this, therefore it's ECC's fault. It's like, no, it's like we all have our roles, we all have our ability to contribute, and we all should. The more the merrier.
Yeah, and it goes into that like right like you said something earlier I thought that was really interesting like you want to get into it early. I think Zcash is still in that stage where from a contributor perspective for a perspective like it is in not its infancy but like from in terms of adoption like Zcash
Hmm.
has the potential to be a top 10 project by market cap, right?
Right.
Like to be one of the major L1 players. And, people who are looking for opportunities to contribute, I still think there's a lot of room for more people to come into the Zcash ecosystem and contribute doing podcasts, doing, media, doing memes, doing tons of different stuff. And I think that's like really, really helpful that it is still early enough in terms of adoption and incentive models to like bring people in to like work on that stuff and grow it.
Yeah, I think that's another reason we were interested in Zcash because if you were to like go do this and be like, oh, we want to help, you know, something that's already super mature, like, oh, we love Apple products. Let's use our skills to like help Apple. It's like, well, you're just a grain of sand in an ocean or whatever on a beach, um, or anything. Like you want to help the U.S. government, you want to help some other country's government. Like that's a long road to get to any influence. Whereas in
Yeah,
Zcash, it's early on. It's still there's like I don't know, um, less than 100 people that are like actively, forming this thing. I mean, I don't know how many there are, but it feels like that. And so therefore each person who gets involved is more empowered. Like if you come and join now, you will actually maybe be able to have some influence. And so it may be a better use of your time, um, as opposed to trying to go somewhere else. Like it's just very attractive to actually be able to have some influence and like go to the people at the top or like the most famous people and just like talk to them. Like it's just not a big deal, whereas if you tried to go to Tesla and like go talk to Elon about like, oh, I don't think Tesla's going in the right direction, like you'd have five bodyguards in your way. Whereas
yeah, it'd be nuts.
Zcash, it's more open.
Yeah, it's more accessible, and like people, you can message kind of anyone. And I wouldn't say expect a response, because I think it's obviously up to the individual if they're going to respond. But I feel like people are pretty open to responding
Yeah.
to newcomers and responding to people and having different conversations. So in that aspect, yeah, like I think there's a massive opportunity. And personally, I'm involved in not involved, but like I know people in other crypto ecosystems, and people have started messaging me like, hey, like I want to get involved in Zcash, like how do I get involved in Zcash? And
Right.
that's really really cool. And a lot of the time it's just like I honestly, like, now there's the infrastructure with free to Z. It's like, hey, go create a free to Z page. Like, if you produce really really good stuff, people are going to appreciate that, and then potentially like give you a tip or reward you in whatever way, right? Create that incentive
Yeah.
model.
Yeah,
So I think, yeah, let me show
I
you
get
here.
messages about people like that are so enthusiastic. They're like, I've been Zcash pilled by this or that. Like, I want to do this thing, and it's just like it's awesome to see. Like, people are really down with the mission and like the culture of Zcash because it has that like it. So I talked to somebody who one of our editors who like helped us with a few of the things later on, and like he's known about Bitcoin, he's known about all these other things for a while, and he really feels like that a lot of the space has sort of lost its sort of roots or like its ethos from what it used to be, and like I don't know if you want to get into like the sort of maximalist approach or like the whether it's like kind of like the casino like side of things with other cryptos. But he was like the main mission that was attractive is like power to the people, and like this is our sort of ability to get outside the old systems that you know are full of corruption, and like we have no saying in how they're running, and they're just kind of doing everything to benefit themselves, and then we're left holding the bag. And Bitcoin was like this, the people's currency and everything, and it was like utopian and sort of like optimistic and decentralized and like really like people powered. And a lot of the space, I mean, I don't know if it was. I don't think it was like this like in the early days, but nowadays a lot of the space is a bit more about I don't know, just the money side of it or
Yeah,
whatnot. Whereas like Zcash really has maintained, and I think it's its strongest asset. It's like mission driven, individual empowerment, respect, consent, consensual opt in, privacy currency, decentral, nobody controls it. Um, and yeah, so it's like that is still our to our benefit, and that is very attractive to people.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think the thing is the other thing about the dev fund is that like in Zcash or in Zuko said in one of our clips, like freedom of speech is great, but without money, it's just words. For money, you need action. For action, you need money. Um, and like we need to connect the people that are enthusiastic to work on Zcash with the resources to be able to to either like quit their day job or like supplement their day job or whatever, or not have to look for their second job, to be able to work on Zcash. That's another reason why I really appreciated the dev fund model. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so um, uh,
So you bring up a really interesting point because I might, from the way it is now, I think so. I'm a firm believer in free markets, and I'm a true believer. I think the best. I was watching a podcast with George Hotz, I think his name is. He's a programmer, hacker type. I think he's doing like a self-driving vehicle company to like compete with Tesla, something of that nature. And he he's the first person who's like clear. I heard clearly say it, and it was like the best technology always wins. Um, and I'm kind of the mind the free market is going to, within crypto specifically, is going to pick the best technologies and the ones that have the best use cases. So for me, like all of this stuff, like the financial speculation and the pictures of cats and all of these other things, which are a lot of fun. Like I today was buying NFTs. Like I had a 30-minute like break between calls, and I bought a bunch of NFTs today. And it's fun, right? But I don't look at that as like this vehicle. I look at that as a really cool vehicle to like make just really easily buy things from artists. I don't look at it this thing that's gonna like, and people have different opinions, but I don't think it's a thing that's going to change like financial infrastructure of the world. Like I do think NFTs potentially could do that in some form of fashion, but I don't think that specifically is what's going to drive, um, people to start using crypto. Maybe in the West and maybe in like college dorm rooms, but I am a firm believer that the best tech is going to win, and the best tech with applied use cases. So like I think Cardano, right? Like Cardano, I don't think has a ton of, and I might get like whatever, I might be wrong, but I don't think it has a ton of like legitimate use cases. But it's built on this like really complex programming language that has all these research papers behind it, which makes it this really scientific and really technically complex thing. And it might be really technically interesting, but I don't think there's a lot of like real application on it, as to where like you have something like Ethereum, which is more like move fast and break things, and tons of people are using it because it has this very like decentralized, developer friendly ecosystem where people can just build stuff, right? And the best things like Luna, Terra UST crashed, Celsius crashed, a lot of the hedge funds crashed, and then like the best products on Ethereum are still kicking and still running strong because they were built with like transparency and these different values in mind. So I
right.
think I think the free market will get rid of a lot of those things. And I think, if you're speculating and you got $1,000 in your checking account and like you're trying to make 1,000 into 100 grand, you're trading against the best, and it's really hard, and you might lose all your money. So like I think those stories will continue to happen, and people will then like kind of get away from that like casino game, because
Hmm.
you're not going to beat the people who've been doing this and are really good at it, right? So like for me,
Right.
it's like pick the best tech, focus on that, and just kind of
Yeah, I think
let
that's
those
a
things come to
lot.
fruition.
Yeah, there's so many interesting things you just said. Yeah, I think going back to the point of my friend who um, was maybe a little bit discouraged by, like, the thing is, like, other people are doing NFTs or whatever and speculating, and it's kind of not necessarily that this is like the same project that Bitcoin was back in the day. It kind of is like, yeah, you're still free to like hold your own beliefs and like participate in it. But one of the main things that is attractive in still cultivating the sort of ethos of mission driven projects for that are betterment, bettering the human society, is like gives you like purpose, and it gives you like community, and like um, makes you feel kind of like you belong, and that optimistic about where things are going. And I think a lot of people really are just looking for things that they can, contribute to and support, that are, you know, going in positive directions, because so many things are going in, wrong directions in the world. And maybe the things are going better than they ever have in our world, but it doesn't feel like that because of how the news works and how social media works. Like everything feels like it's negative. So like, yeah, still maintaining, like, everybody else is free to do whatever they want on Ethereum. Like, it is a free market and anybody can build whatever they want. But I think it is still good to cultivate projects that are a little bit more. Everybody's free to use Zcash however they want, and not every, Zcash or whatever project doesn't have to only have one thing. Like, people could use Zcash to pay for their NFTs in the future and do all the speculation they want. But I do think it's not only just good, but also like strategically good to cultivate that sort of like bigger than ourself type mentality, contributing to something that will really make an impact beyond ourselves, where we can actually have a hand in that, because that will bring in people to help build everything, like the soft infrastructure, which is like, you know, all the stuff that like we're doing, and all the things around the tech, and all of the people and the community and the support networks, as well as like the hard infrastructure. You may get somebody who's fresh out of college, just went to Stanford or whatever, is like a whiz in cryptography. They could either go work for Google, or they could work for Facebook and make $500,000 a year. Or, oh, I just heard about the Zcash thing, which is like literally the opposite. And it's like about um, bringing power to the people and privacy, and how much erosion of privacy we've had in our society, and how it brings us back to our like, original founding principles of, um, you know, individual expression, privacy, protection from the state, helps, the people who need privacy the most. And they're like, I'm going to go work for Zcash rather than go work for Facebook, because I believe in what Zcash is building. That's like our strategic advantage over other things, and I think it needs to be cultivated. And then, yeah, the free markets thing, it's interesting too. Like, free markets, like we said in our Zcon talk, there's this quote that I really like, where it's like, free markets work well under the assumption that there's educated consumers making rational choices. Where, like, if they're presented with 10 different options for the same product, ideally they would choose the one that is best for them. Like, it's going to last the longest. It's not going to be some phone that just breaks after 2 years, because that's how it was designed to buy another phone. It's like, no, they're going to ideally buy the one that lasts 20 years so they don't have to keep rebuying new phones. But if they don't know that when they're going between these 10 choices, and they just, the thing that can kind of distort the promise of a free market is like misinformation and marketing and advertising that basically can make the thing that's not as good for them more appealing than the thing that's good for them, because they don't necessarily have all the information they need to make that correct choice. And so things that are less good for consumers can actually win out because they survive in the rules of the game, because the game's not necessarily designed for like what's best for people. It's just designed for survival of the fittest. Sometimes the fittest are the most, not what's good. They just the
Yeah.
most aggressive or whatever. So
Well,
that's another reason I feel pretty strongly about user education, and letting people know that, like, you got two privacy coins in front of you, right? And one of them gives you an anonymity set of 16, let's say, where it's one of 16 things could have been your transaction. And the other one gives you an anonymity set of like 1 million. And But let's say you don't know that, and you just see which one is more popular, which one has a higher market cap, which one has more wallets or whatever. You go with the one that's just like more popular. And, that's the one with 16, anonymity set, like the ring signatures with Monero, like, versus Zcash, the privacy is actually much stronger, like 500 times
yeah.
or whatever the number is stronger, because you have more anonymity set. But people don't, I would never expect anybody to know that, unless,
Yeah.
they're given some sort of background. Um, so
Yeah.
Monero could easily win out over Zcash in a free market if
I
Zcash itself doesn't also um, let people know that it exactly what it's offering compared to the other one.
I think the Monero one's interesting, and I don't know if this is the right description of um of the two different like strategies. And I'm being friendly to Monero right now. I
Yeah,
think
sure.
Monero may have went like, okay, we're gonna go for usability, like privacy by default, and then we're gonna add cryptographic security over the course of time. And Zcash was like the other side of it of like, no, we're gonna start with like the most cryptographically secure um, protocol, and then we're going to make it easier to use and have a better user experience over time. And I think those two things are just like, I think Monero probably got earlier adoption because it was it. I never used Monero in like 2017, right? But like I imagine
Hmm.
at the time because I use Monero now and I use Zcash now, and they're both pretty like using Ethereum. Even though the Ethereum user experience is not great, right? Using Ethereum is a lot easier than using Monero or Zcash, in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
and the accessibility to get Monero is actually a little bit more difficult. I had to do a swap for Bitcoin to Monero like 2 weeks ago because I needed some Monero to get something, and it took like 27 hours because
Hmm.
I didn't pay a high enough transaction fee, so none of the miners in the Bitcoin mining pools were validating my transaction, so it got stuck. So I had to wait like a day and a half for
Right.
it to go through, which is not a great UX, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I still think now Zcash is a lot easier to use maybe than it was like a few years ago, or a little bit before shielded addresses became on like got into mobile wallets and got into like desktop wallets. Um, so I don't know, and Monero just had a recent network
Yeah.
upgrade that I think added some privacy features. I haven't read about it, but I
Yeah.
would say that's a really good point. It's like you go to the two websites and it's like we're the best, and then the user's like, how do I know which one's better? And they're going to go for the one that's more popular when that might not be the one that's the best thing for their specific use case, right? And that's where projects need to kind of just lay out education and be like, hey, this is what we're good for, and if you need this, you should use us because of X, Y, and Z.
Right. Yeah. It's a fair point. Like, it is not necessarily, it's not like they're the exact same thing with one being less cryptographic security and the other being more. It's like they did take different strategies. As far as I know, I'm not like a Monero historian as much as I am Zcash. But that's a good point. Like, if people don't have great user experience and can't use the thing, then it could be the best theoretically and have the best explanations, and then it doesn't matter. So it's
Yeah,
like, um, and then yeah, but it's a difference in strategy. Like the the Zcash people were like, it's easiest to build cryptographic security on the base layer, I guess, like time horizon, right? It's like if we're thinking 10, 20 years or 15, whatever, where um, the first 5 years are going to be pretty rough because like the zero knowledge proofs are so beefy and slow, require so much memory. But in 10 years, we're going to be very glad we did it this way
yeah,
because in the second 5 years, it's like, okay, now we've made the proofs more efficient. We've got rid of trusted setup. We've gotten more wallets to work. We've gotten faster syncing, all with the same exact privacy guarantees without having to give up anything, but only improving. Versus like starting with maybe UX first and being like, well, we can't implement the hardest core cryptography, but we can get this thing working. And then later we add the cryptography. That seems kind of more difficult to me. I'm not an expert, but like I just kind of go like once things are kind of built on top, there's a bit of like historical difficulty in removing them. So yeah, it's like a difference in choice, and then like let's say it gets to a point in the limit of like both Monero and Zcash or whatever other coin are all equally usable. Um, and so that doesn't become the discriminating factor, but they offer different levels of privacy. Let's say Bitcoin, Zcash, Monero. Um, I don't expect anybody to know exactly how much information leakage there is between the three. Um, but in order for a free market to select the best one, people have to know that this one is the one that gives me the best privacy or whatever they want or the most transparency. Therefore, Bitcoin would work if that was
Yeah.
their thing they desired. But right now, it's like Bitcoin is like 200, 300 times more market share than Zcash. So the free market is telling you that Bitcoin's better. Um, so we'll have to see what happens in over time. I
Well, I
personally
think
believe the thing with Zcash is like if it were coming out of nowhere and there were like just Ethereum was the first crypto, I would have been much more like, I have no idea if this thing is going to work. But Bitcoin kind of already laid out the path. Like it was the first experiment in 2009 and it succeeded to like a large degree. Like I would say hasn't quite succeeded in like number of transactions and everything, but as like a store of value and brand and network effects and like leading the way, it has very much succeeded. So there's no reason Zcash can't follow that path as well as adapt and learn from others. It's one of the reasons why I was like, this has already worked for something else, and here's a better option that has a really
yeah.
great team. It should over time like take the market share from people that want a private and hard cap decentralized digital currency. Um, so
Well, yeah,
yeah,
there's a ton of like I have a ton of thoughts there, but there's something you were mentioning earlier from like a user education standpoint that for free market to function correctly, um, you know, the people within the market, like the consumers, need to be able to select things, and have equal knowledge of all the different, options that they have, and then select the best one for their specific use case. So let's talk about the education aspect of it because there's a big question that has come up in the community, and I think it's a really important one. And I think you and I probably agree on this, but why within the aspect of education, why does quality matter?
yeah. So yeah, I think like um, there's a bit of context there, like for anybody, yeah, who doesn't know the whole debate. It's like so Zcash Media are big believers in the um, maintenance of a certain like quality level for the stuff we have put out and want to put out. And then other people believe that like you just need the pure information or whatnot. And the thing is, you could just have both. Like that's the easy solution. There's nobody's needs to pick and choose. But like sticking on our belief in why quality is important because um, it's important to us specifically because of the audience we're trying to reach. Like, um, if it were geared strictly towards like crypto natives who already have all this context and history about why crypto is important and what you can do with it and how it works, they already have lots of experience with other wallets, other currencies, other projects. Um, they may not need this like super cool thing to get them on board with how to use Zcash. Um, but if you try and go to like a normal person and, uh, try and be like, hey, there's this Zcash thing. That's a really cool project. It's trying to do something better for the world. It has, um, it's potentially like a good investment, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I can't go to the people that I'm interested necessarily in showing with something that's like, you know, really janky or like they're gonna be like, oh, this is just like some niche thing that I don't really care about, or I can tell like you're excited about it, but like, yeah, it's just some niche thing. Um, Whereas like it's also like yeah, like trying to reach those people and having them see something that's really attractive and well done shows that like the project is like taking its efforts seriously to try and reach them and be like, okay, wow, they really put a lot of effort and they really have like good people working on this. And then So therefore, it's a bit more like, wow, I'm impressed at the actual, not only just what they're telling me, but the video itself. It kind of like adds to the overall impression that people get. And also, like, there's different aspects to like user education. There's like pure information. Like if you want to compare Bitcoin, Zcash, Monero, you could like have 5 bullet points in both to like discriminate them. Um, and that's like enough. But then at the other point, like quality is helpful for like the sort of more ideological aspects of Zcash, because like a lot of Zcash is like it's more of like a movement than it is just a pure technology. Like I think of it as sort of like this grassroots privacy movement that we're a part of with other people, for like just like other political movements like you know um, whatever. I was going to say like the founding of the U.S. I don't know if that's like a controversial example, but nonetheless, it's like part of a movement towards like individual empowerment, democracy, fighting against powers that be, yada yada. And those are the types of people you need on board early on to like be your spokespeople and be the sort of decentralized army of enthusiasts. And people get excited when really cool stuff gets put out, not just the information, but like the delivery. Um, and yeah, it just can reach like more people, and especially with like regulation. Like, so I have certain family members that are like high up in certain like areas of government or companies or whatever. Um, and I could like go to them and be like, here's this thing that lays out exactly why a private cryptocurrency is actually good for this country and not like some attack on the government. And if I go to them with like a kind of lower quality thing, they won't take it nearly as seriously as something like high quality. And like it's also like that's kind of how certain ideas spread. Like really high quality things, like if somebody's writing a book or whatever, like it's going to have more staying power if you like take a long time to write one good book than if you just like took that same book and just tweeted it out. It's about like permanence too, like
Yeah.
posterity. It stands the test of time when it's kind of like really well done. Whereas I think that's one of the main problems with like communicating anything nowadays in crypto is like everything's so ephemeral, where like you put out some really great information on Twitter or whatever, it gets a lot of likes, and then it's like nobody is really going to find that again unless they
Ever
somehow,
again. Yep.
yeah. um, so like doing things um, with like a sense of finality and craftsmanship, um, putting them in a place like YouTube's pretty great for like looking back up old videos and stuff, or like curating a channel where it's like, okay, there's a million ideas we want to put, but we only give you 10 videos. You can just go to that channel and watch those videos, and then that's just the place you can go forever to like tell anybody about these ideas.
Yeah.
Whereas like, yeah, other stuff is just so ephemeral. It's like it feels like you're just putting it into the wind and it gets blown away.
I mean, that's a great point. Like, so I've done some stuff like on Twitter regarding Zcash, and some posts have done pretty well. Like, I think I did a tutorial on taking ETH and moving it into a shielded wallet. I think it got like 30,000 impressions. I think the video got like 10,000 views,
Yeah.
right? And that's really cool. But the amount, like the way Twitter works, that video is gone. It's not pinned to the top of my profile anymore. It's not getting shared. People aren't liking it anymore. As to where if you put something on YouTube and you Google, I mean, you search within YouTube, you search Zcash, what's the first thing that pops up? What is money from Zcash Media, right? Like
I
it's
hope
this
so.
thing that kind of like is there for any, and people are gonna like. I know that a lot of us in the community don't like Google and are not huge YouTube fans, because of Google. I think YouTube is it's fine. I'm not a huge fan of Google, but they're fine. And but people, that's what people use, and you need to put that information in the hands and in the place of where like people are actually going to go search it, right? And you don't want it to be some like speculation video, because I'm trying to, like I just mentioned earlier, I'm trying to learn more about Monero, and you search Monero on YouTube. I mean, yeah, on YouTube, and all the videos are like, they have some good stuff, like Monero Talks pretty good, and they have some other stuff that's okay, but that's really low compared to the Monero is going to go to $1,500, and I can't find
Yeah.
anything. But when you have Zcash, because of Zcash Media in that video, it's the first thing that pops up.
Right. Yeah. The thing is also like, is like, you don't go to Twitter and use it as a search engine.
No.
Like, you go and you just have the feed and whatever. And Google and YouTube are the number one, number two search engines, however many queries a day. So it's where you can go to like, or whatever other search engine you want to use. It's where you go to find out information and like actually look for something instead of have something fed to you, even though I'm sure they obviously feed things to you in Google and YouTube too. But like that video, the how do you go back and forth between ETH and a shielded Zec? Like if I were to try and go look at that video for you on Twitter, it would be kind of annoying. And like the mobile app on Twitter doesn't even have the advanced search. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I always have to go to my browser and then send myself the link on my phone to be able to find the thing. Whereas like you took the time, or anybody took the time to like, all right, we're just going to make this video once and be like, here's the ultimate video on how you can go back and forth between shielded Zec or whatever currency. It like saves time, like over time. Like that's the other thing
Mhm.
with quality is like if you do it right up front, it actually saves a lot of time later. Because instead of like having to search through Twitter for this thing, um, or like re-explain it from scratch, you just have the one link to the video and you can send it to my. So it's like parallelizes. That's another. I think we wrote that in our first grant application. It's like having videos or article or whatever that's just like synthesizes everything like for once really saves people a lot of time later so they don't have to like be like, okay, well here's what money is, here's what Bitcoin is, here's what blockchain is, then I can get to Zcash so you like understand.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
you take that time up front, and then now in the future, it's like people can just send that link, 20 times in 10 minutes versus like each explanation taking 10 minutes.
And
And
having to send 100 links.
right.
So
So,
let's break that down. I want to dive deeper there, because I think that's an important point. So obviously, me and now a few other people are working on this thing, ZecHub,
right.
where we're like creating quick tutorials and little news updates and podcasts. And I think people kind of like would maybe like confuse Zcash Media and ZecHub. I
Mhm.
think they're completely different. Like our my target audience, what I envisioned in the beginning was like, I'm gonna try to get to like Ethereum and Solana people. Like that's really it. I want to get to like people in other cryptocurrency
Right.
ecosystems,
Which is
and they
great.
all and they all live on Twitter. So I'm gonna create stuff, and the stuff
Yeah.
I put on Twitter does a lot better than the stuff I put on YouTube. All of our stuff's on YouTube, but Twitter is where we get the most impressions and most views, most clicks, everything. The audience you guys are going for is a bit different. You're trying to get after those, new users, people who are getting into cryptocurrency maybe for the first time. If I wanted to send my dad or my mom a video, I would send them the Zcash Media videos, right? Like, is that a correct assumption? Like, there needs to be different things, and
Yeah.
going after maybe the market you're going after, there is a certain quality aspect that they're used to. Like, they're used to really high quality stuff because they're watching Netflix, or they're watching really professionally done Lex Fridman
Yeah.
podcasts. Like, can you like dive a little bit deeper there? Like, why the quality is really specific to the
Yeah.
market?
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Really wish Natasha were here too, who's like a pillar leader of Zcash Media, because I'm sure she would have lots of thoughts on this. But um, Yeah, it's like different strokes, different folks. Like you have to meet different people where they're at. Like a lot of people in, and also we've only like done 2 videos, so I think it's like kind of overfitting to be like, this is what Zcash Media will. That's just what they do. Is they like always dumb it down to um, the simplest possible level. It's just like that was just it's like marketing funnel, like or education funnel, whatever you want to call it. Like at the top, it's broad, and at the bottom, it's narrow. And in order to hit everybody, you need both broad things and narrow things. And like broad things are kind of like our first video, as well as like we want to continue making to fill out the top of the funnel to be like all the big points about why you would even consider going the next step down the funnel. And then when you get and then the people are like, okay, I'm on board. This is really cool. Like, how do I actually use the thing, or like, what's the real time updates on what Zcash is doing? How do I use it with other currencies? Then you're like, you need content for them too, so that they um, don't get bored after they've already done 101 stuff. And then you get to the bottom of the funnel, it's like just people trying to stay literally like live updates in this community, like
Hmm.
all the stuff about the merge you're seeing recently where like people are just talking about literally what's going on that night, and like having podcasts and guest appearances and all this real time updates. That's more like bottom of the funnel, as well as like all the little details you need to know about um, Zcash and like the grants and everything. Like if you really want to know like what's going on with the grants, what's going on with elections, what's going on with this or that, that's like the bottom of the funnel. You wouldn't give that to people at the top, otherwise they'd be like, "What? This is crazy."
They're like, what is ZCap? They'd be like, I have no idea what this stands for. There's like
Yeah,
140
Zcap,
people. Yeah,
CF,
like all these things.
ECC, ZCG, we got DCG. Um, yeah, so and then like um, that's kind of how informs like the difference in like form follows function, right? So if like the function is to reach the Ethereum, Solana, Twitter folks, you have to kind of create like interesting, flashy, like, did you know that you could do this shielded swap really easily, and then you're all of a sudden in the shielded pool and having this, privacy preserving collateral, and then you can go back out after a given time to use ETH to go on Gitcoin or to, buy an NFT. People are like, oh, that's interesting, that's cool, it's fun. I like doing stuff with crypto. I like privacy. I like knowing how to use other cryptos. Um, and that's the function. It engages those people. People are interested about where things are, where they're going, what's the trends. And then the function of some of the stuff we've made so far is like trying to reach broader audience who's maybe a bit more skeptical. Like a lot of people are still very skeptical of crypto. Like they kind of see it as this get rich quick schemes or whatnot. So you kind of have to like deliver to them a bit more of like a um, curated experience where they get to see the true fundamentals of what this thing stands for, which are like um, pretty attractive to a wide swath of people. Like if you explain it right, nobody's going to be like, I don't know anybody that would say privacy is a bad thing completely, or that having people have the option to like hold this currency separate from the currencies that the country they live in, where it's like getting inflated by Turkey, Argentina, other places. Like of course they should have the option to easily use a different currency, but like if they get hit with something that's all about like the charts, like you mentioned with Monero, they're gonna be like, oh yep, confirmed. Crypto is just all about prices and getting rich quick. So yeah, it's helpful to have
Yeah,
form follow function in that case, and
yeah.
different audiences. And I think we need them all. Like, because the thing with Zcash is like it's supposed to be global currency. Bitcoin right now is perhaps the farthest along, and Ethereum is catching up. and they do a lot of great work. Like, I think we have a lot to learn from, especially like the Bitcoin people. You know, that's the good thing about having predecessors, is like we can take what worked for them and apply it to our stuff and leave behind what didn't work. Like, we don't want to necessarily import all of the, fundamentalist side of Bitcoin maximalism. We do want to import the sort of like very mission based, very educated, very like, super belief in this thing,
Mhm.
and grassroots style energy and community. Um, and so, yeah, I sort of lost my train of thought, but
No, I think let's that kind of leads. I have like the next point I want to talk about. So let's build off Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin a lot, and I don't think I like Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin for a lot of reasons. I don't like using Bitcoin. It's really hard to it's really
is
hard to
it?
use.
I
I think
haven't
so.
used it
It's
in a
I think it's
while.
I use it every now and then, probably like once or
What is
twice a
the
month.
major problem? The block times or something?
Yeah, it's in trying to understand like again like and I my introduction into crypto wasn't through Bitcoin. Like I heard about Bitcoin first, but I was like 2017, and I was kind of, oh, Bitcoin's cool, but then I found this Ethereum thing, right? And then I was like kind of all in trying to learn about Ethereum. Um, and the issue that, I have with Bitcoin sometimes is that it's really really hard to kind of understand the various technical aspects of it. Like, am I what address am I supposed to use, legacy or segwit or taproot? And like I
Right,
don't, and it's really it's hard to kind of understand. And I think I've come to the conclusion that segwit's the best one to use. But then I tried to use segwit, like, and then the payment processor I was trying to use didn't accept segwit, so I had to
right.
like move it to a taproot address because it accepted taproot, and it was a mess, right? And maybe
Mm,
that's just because I'm, an idiot and can't figure it out. But I don't think I am. So I feel like other people would have that problem if they were trying to use it on chain.
yeah,
Lightning's pretty difficult to use. Um, I think that'll get better though. I think Lightning will get better. Um, but the thing I really like about Bitcoin, aside from its user experience, is the community that it does have with people who are just willing to drop everything in their life, shift the focus. Like Alex Gladstein at the Human Rights Foundation has really shifted a lot of the content that they're doing at their conferences around, human rights and kind of how Bitcoin empowers human rights activism, which I think is really
hmm,
cool. And they have these, groups of people that are just willing to drop everything and say, I'm going to go all in on this Bitcoin thing. I'm going to put all my money into it. And if it goes down, it goes down. If it goes up, it goes up. And I'm going to try to make the world a better place. And from that stems this really, really decentralized, in my opinion, decentralized education kind of system, um, that all maintains a really good level of quality. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on, with Bitcoin being the predecessor, I think you would agree with this, that they have like a really good, like the What Bitcoin Did podcast, Citadel Dispatch, they have other podcasts that are really good, within that ecosystem around various Bitcoin topics.
right. Yeah.
How do you think Zcash could potentially get to that stage where it has 400 individuals who are independent? They're not relying on dev fund. They're not relying on, um, ECC or ZF. They're just doing it on their own because they think this is the thing that's going to change the world and change the financial system, or at least be private cash within a new financial system.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know Bitcoin community stuff as well as I perhaps should. I will say the one thing I've noticed is like, for the communities that do have that sort of like organic, like podcasts and um, media type stuff. I guess I can't say since I wasn't there at the very beginning, but like it feels like a lot of people, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, have done quite well. So like, let's say you're an early adopter and you bought like 100,000 Bitcoin, and even after like 2013 or 2017, you're up like so much. Like of course you could like give up everything, not require any input, and like happily interview, you know, whoever you want, all the famous crypto people, and you're good to go. Um, and I think Zcash is a little different. I think Zcash's price performance hasn't matched Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so, like, a lot of people that like giving the price going up and like seeing those numbers go up and like knowing the extra purchasing power you have is like a positive feeling, right? And the opposite is true as well. Like, let's say Zcash hasn't given you that sort of like boost, then you still have to work. Like, you still have to do something else instead of doing that podcast for Zcash you always wanted to do because you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I think that's one like difference between Zcash and other projects. Um, and then, I mean, a lot of things are sponsored by others, though. So, like, since there is no dev fund or whatever, and um, people tend to get sponsored by other means, like, you know, Bankless has all sorts of sponsorships. Um, and then, you know, Up Only or
Yep.
whatever. I don't know how much they get from FTX, but they have a bit. And taking, you know, case in point, like the Up Only guys, at least the one of them has been there around forever, so I can just do the crypto podcast as a hobby. Um, so yeah, but I think we should definitely learn from that type of thing. And what you're doing is actually a perfect example with ZecHub. But even you yourself, it's like also kind of outside of work hours, or what's your like sort of
It's
relationship with
Yeah,
that?
so ZecHub's really interesting because I feel bad when I do it. I've done it, like, I'm not gonna lie and say I've never done it during ECC hours. It's usually in the
Yeah,
morning, like I'm like editing a podcast and it'll roll into like if I'm not doing ZecHub, I start ECC at like 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. most mornings, like start
yeah,
work. But if I'm doing a ZecHub, I try to start at 9, and then sometimes it rolls into like 9:30, 10, and that's probably I don't really work on it in the afternoons. I work on it in the evenings quite a bit. But I think the other thing is like, working at ECC, I have an advantage um, because my job is basically crypto Twitter. It's like kind of my job, a large part of it, at least 50%.
hmm
And so since I'm living on Twitter for my job, I can get all of these links and I can stay up to date on the information. So if I wanted to do a video on like updating everybody on the news, or if I wanted to do, when Argent, the Ethereum wallet, dropped the Zcash poster, I had the idea of like, oh, I'll do a tutorial for like moving ETH to like Y wallet, right? So I think I have an advantage of the fact that I'm just on Twitter all the time and I know what's going on. And I always have like, I would imagine I'm one of the first 20 people that finds out about something related to Zcash every day. If
right,
something
right,
happens with Zcash, like I'm there to like know what's going on.
uh-huh.
Um, so I think the relationship is I probably have an advantage. But I think you can kind of look at the history of ZecHub and you can clearly see in the beginning I was doing like 20, 30 hours a week on it, and then it slowly tapered off just because you have a full-time job and you have this thing, and then you have responsibilities in your life and you're trying to have this like balance a little bit, and it's just really hard. Yeah, it's really hard to keep up with, and I haven't updated some pages on the Wikipedia, stuff like that. So I think trying to add people to it is um, a really smart thing for me to have done, like to bring more people into it, which was the intention anyways. And I think it's gonna improve because it'll have other people, and the expectation for everyone is like we're not gonna get paid to do this, and we're trying to like cap it at like 2.5 to 5 hours a week. That's all any of us spend on it,
hmm
and we're trying to see like, okay, we're going to do this in our spare time, and can we decentralize the workload enough to where like we constantly like we have like our goals and objectives, and like can we meet them, because I haven't met the ones my goal was to do a Zec daily 3 times a week. I do the newsletter every week, so I've kept up with that. I haven't done as many tutorials as I wanted to. I wanted to do 10 podcasts, and I think I'm only going to get 5 out before I take a break from it. So I haven't been able to produce as much content as I wanted to, and that's due to this not being a this not being something I can realistically probably spend 30 hours or 25 hours on every single week. So I
Yeah.
think let's think about that. Do you think like there's a way if someone wanted to do a Zcash podcast and it's like, hey, I have 10 hours a week, you know, do you think there should be, I would encourage more of those types of applications to, community grants, right? Like, and don't ask for like $200,000 if you're only going to do it for 10 hours a week and you're only going to do it maybe like half of the year. So maybe ask, I don't know, I would, if I were to do a podcast like that and I was going to do it for 6 months and I was going to maybe like 20 grand in my spare time. And like, I feel like 20 grand divided by six, whatever that is, like a monthly stipend, I feel like that would be like fair, right? I don't know
Right.
how much it'd be worth, but like more of those types of applications, like people just asking for smaller grants to do like these types of like marketing things that are lower lift. Um, I
Yeah.
think that could be a way to supplement it in the meantime. But yeah, it's really hard, man. It's really, really hard to figure out
Yeah.
how to like do this stuff.
Right. Yeah. It takes a lot of time. I think. I think. Yeah. It's like anybody can try and do it. I think it's just like you're mentioning. Like it does take a lot of like background knowledge. And so like when we were initially making our first videos, like I had my own research I had done, and then like it takes a long time to onboard people because you have to get like for us we had one main editor, and he had to like learn about the logic and all the chronology and like what actually we're trying to say before he could even do like his actual skill set, which is editing videos, putting sound, color, all these things. Same thing with us. Like me and Natasha, we had to learn so much about what's already been said, like what do audiences know or don't they, don't know. Um, Go through like all the 30 hours of footage, catalog it, and see which, if you have five different sound bites saying the same thing from five different people, which one should you use? Which one will make the video more balanced and showcase more people and not just the same people, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, like staying up to date and like being knowledgeable about this thing is pretty rare. Like there's only a few, I don't know, less than 500,000 people in this entire world that know like exactly what's up with Zcash and can like communicate it well to others. And then,
And
yeah, and then like,
I want to interrupt and say I am not one of those people. Like I would not consider myself in that bucket. I just kind of read stuff and then just repeat what's read and
right,
like not understand it. So like the fact that you guys have like gone that step further, and again, it's not because like it's something I'm not trying to do. It's just really, really hard. It's not easy, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely difficult. And then yeah, the difficulty super. I don't know. Yeah, like our experience with like I've gotten a PhD in structural biology, and I've done other various like difficult things, and making the making the first video, the one that the future money one, it was pretty challenging. Like, um, it was like a lot of work to go get the footage and do it as cheaply as possible and bring all the gear, come up with all the questions, find the location. Like locations are annoyingly hard to find. Like unless somebody has a dope pad that they're willing to let you use, like you can go on whatever that web. There's a website that like you can rent spaces with for filming, but those are all like $100 $200 an hour. You're there for 8 hours. There goes $1,000 or whatever. So like we filmed one of the interviews, Deirdre's interview, in we were staying in Boston with my aunt and uncle because they like generously let us crash there, And we like basically my uncle, we were like, where can we film her? He's like, well, you can use our community church. And so like we went and just used this random church for free to film Deirdre's interview, but like finding spaces takes time, and then getting into New York, like we did Carlos and Amber, and just getting in and out of New York by itself is a challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
it's
be there
like
next
collecting
week.
the interview was a lot of work, and um, I think the hardest part though is still just the writing, um,
Yeah.
like coming up with ways to say things that at the end of the day you look at something and you're like, oh yeah, of course, like that's how you would explain that thing. But there's like for every one correct easy way, there's infinite number of like wrong ways, and so like sorting through all those and like getting to the best, most simple way was took a lot of time, and um, yeah, I would say the hardest part for the future money video was just the beginning and the end, like how could you possibly explain like all the motivations for creating Bitcoin in the first place in like 3 minutes? It's like you have the history of money, you've got like the fact that governments control the money supply, and you also have like hard to exchange currencies, and then inflation versus like places that don't have inflation, because not every currency has inflation. How do you explain like that type of thing? And then also moving away from intermediaries like banks and all that sorts of stuff is like there's actually so many
There's
motivations.
so many layers too to it. Like it's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was some of these struggles were very like interesting, and then the some of the ways to explain like zero knowledge proofs, which I'm like pretty proud of, the whole animation of how we basically said it's like you make a transaction, and the transaction gets run through a code on your phone and gets checked for rules, make sure it's following the rules, and then it gets stamped or encrypted and then stamped, and then it gets sent out to the blockchain. Like that took a while. We were like, how are we going to explain these? What a zero knowledge proof actually does? And then the Snowden video, the animations for um, the trusted setup was pretty interesting. Like because the toxic waste is the way that it's traditionally explained by ECC and others. Like you have all the ingredients when you're doing the trusted setup, each of the 6 keys, and if they get together all at once, then you get like nuclear bomb or whatever. And we were like, oh, is that like the, and people like we were telling them about that, they're like, I don't get it. Like I don't get the toxic waste thing. And so then we were talking about all sorts of crazy things, and we finally got to like the whole nuclear key idea. Like when you launch a nuclear bomb, you have to have, you see in movies all the time, you have to have the 2 keys go in and turn at the same time, otherwise you can't do it. And people get that idea. It's like a security thing. If you're missing any one of the keys, you can't do it. So that's why we kind of stuck with the fact that there were 6 keys and that you needed them all at once to be able to start Zcash. And if any one of them was destroyed, you wouldn't be able to change anything or
Hmm.
make fake uh, proofs or whatever. So that was that also took just takes time. Like
Yeah.
um, there's only so many hours in the day. Like you can each one of those things could take a whole set of days to work through and everything.
Yeah.
So
And people forget that these things take a lot of time.
right,
How was the process of I want to get to one person in particular. Um, but how was the process of, you're talking about the interviews earlier. How was it meeting all of these different people and some of the brightest minds we would probably consider from the industry and from
right,
Zcash? Like, what was it like meeting all of
yeah,
these people and getting the chance to interview them for these videos?
Yeah, it was great. The last year, um, almost more than a year now, was really one of the most fun years of my life. Like getting involved with something so open and dynamic, and being funded from basically like a magic internet money printer, um, and able actually to turn that into meaningful work and get to meet all these people is a great experience. Really grateful to every single one of our interviewees that took the time to talk to us, and they're all really inspiring people. Um, right off the bat, I think it was like I was talking on the forum, and I was like pretty active on the Zcash forum at that time because I was like, "Oh, it's so great! You can like comment on the direction of how things are going," and I was like enjoyed being able to put my 2 cents in. And I made some like comment about some grant that Zuko must have liked, and he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, great post on that." I think it must have been like Thor chain or something where I was saying like that we should do it for some reason, that people will use it, or all the problems with using Renzek makes me believe Thor chain's a good idea. And he was like, "Great post," something, and I was just like, "Hey, what are the people that are actually going to make the video about Zcash? And would be great to talk to you. Would you mind chatting with us?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, like let's set up a time to meet." And so the only time we had was like early in the morning, so like we were like, "Oh shit, we're about to meet Zuko, like the guy who is very prominent in this space and also very like." Very has a lot of really good beliefs and a long history. Is just like really cool. And so we all come over, and it's like 8 in the morning for us, which is usually definitely earlier than I usually go to work. And we talked to him, video call. He was just like so great and like ready to talk. And like even before he knew us, we were like, yeah, we're thinking about like starting a YouTube channel. Um, for this and that because nobody seems to be making these types of videos, and we think that'd be really powerful. And he's like, "You guys should do that, like you guys," because he was really emphatic about having more people doing things in Zcash. And so then we like set up the interviews to go meet with him and Sean and Josh and Nate in Colorado first. And so we flew out there, and this is all like really fast and rushed. Like we had to come up with all the questions. Like we had just learned about Zcash. We had just because before we like went to the interviews, we like basically wrote out the script of the first video, so we know what interview questions we want to fill in the different sections, as well as we thought about all the videos we could make down the line. Because it's like if you're going to make these trips that are like expensive, you want to maximize what you get. And so we thought about all the questions for other videos so we can make those. And then I was also still work. I mean, everybody was also working other jobs. So like, um, yeah, when we flew out to Colorado to meet Zuko, we initially went to this coffee shop near him. I think it's called Red Rock Coffee, and where they accept Zcash. And so Zuko pays for Zcash or coffee there with Zcash, and so did we. And they agreed to like we had to call them, make sure it was okay to film in their place, and we we got there, and then the Zuko and Sean Bo came out, and I had known about Sean Bo because of his Halo breakthrough, and that he was like the guy who fixed the trusted setup problem, made it obsolete. This like insanely you know niche cryptographic cutting edge problem. I was like, damn, this is like pretty crazy to meet these people. And yeah, at first, yeah, everybody's always taller in person. I feel like I don't know if
It
you've
both
noticed that.
both both Zuko and Sean, they're like, and I'm 6'5", so when people meet me, they're like, "What the hell?" But like, I did not expect Zuko and Sean both to be that tall. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both tall.
Yeah. I
Um,
think like maybe 5'11", 6 foot. Yeah.
Zuko's probably like he might be 6'3". Um, and So anyway, we it was pretty cool. Meeting them. I think at first you got to break the ice, and so we were at the coffee shop. We did some questions there, and it wasn't like the best setting. Like there was noise in the background and everything, but we got that shot of Zuko paying for coffee with Zec Wallet that went into the Future Money video, and we got to meet the owner, and everybody asked them about how Zcash why they used it, and the owner was like, I he's like, make sure you guys say, and we like interviewed him, and it's like he was basically like, I have to pay $8,000 a year to the credit card companies to let me have the pleasure, or like to give me the pleasure of allowing my customers to use their credit cards here. Um, and that's one of the reasons why he uses Zcash, was because the credit card fees are such a killer for him. Um, and then also that the whole reason that business privacy is good for business. So we got to meet like that kind of local shop that was um, using Zcash, and then what I think we already knew about, but so and I think Zuko is okay with us sharing this. So what anybody has to do before going to Zuko's house, and I don't know if he's lightened the rules recently, but I doubt it, is that you have to go through a ceremony. So there's lots of ceremonies in Zcash, and you go to this local park where Zuko makes you um, swear an oath that is basically like you're not gonna write down or say where this location is or tell other people about it without his permission or something. And so it's like a symbolic moment to be like, um, don't tell anybody about this if I don't say so. It's like basically respect my privacy, and this is meaningful to me. And ceremonies are a way of you know encapsulating meaning. And then after we did our oath, the other part is that you get blindfolded and have to get walked from the park to the house, so that there's a bit of disconnect between where you are and where the house is until you complete the whole thing. And so we did that, and funny enough, like we only had two blindfolds, or Zuko did, and there was three people. And so Sean Bow and I had to go to, we didn't have to, but we found out that you could go to the local sex shop, and we got the third blindfold. So right off the bat, my first experience meeting Zcash people was pretty fun. Broke the ice, and we asked the people at the sex shop if they would take Zcash, and they kind of looked at us like we're crazy. And I was like, this guy literally invented it, pointing to Sean. And they're like, oh, that makes me want to accept it even less. But yeah, so we got the blindfolds, and we went through the ceremony. And then once you go through the ceremony, you're free to be. It's symbolic. And then yeah, we had to. And then Josh actually went through the same ceremony because he hadn't been to Zuko's, but he came for the interview. Um, so that was just really fun and cool, and like um, it's cool when people like let you into their life so welcomingly, but also like tell you up front what they kind of find important,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I really respect. It's like you're welcome to come over, and but this is really meaningful to me. Like um, that's why I have these people do this symbolic ceremony. Um, and then yeah, so like Zuko is super super great, and yeah, it was just really cool to meet all these people all at once, get like kind of baptized. Nate is like so eloquent in explaining things, um, that you can like ask him anything, and he'll like take the time to like say it well. And And Sean is, um, yeah, Sean's just great. Like you can ask Sean anything and be like, um, yeah, like what's the plan for adding programmability to Zcash? And he'll just be like, sure, we can do that. We can do that, sure. Like, yeah, we could work on that. He's like, I'm not working on it right now, but we could do that. And then so that was really great. I would say the other um, like it was yeah, like we met and interviewed with so many people. Like Natasha and Jeff flew up to interview Michelle in Seattle. I didn't get to go to that one. We interviewed Chris Berniski on Zoom because he's over in Hawaii, and then we had like a big East Coast trip where we went up to Boston and New York, and then DC to hit like Deirdre and Amber Balde, chair of the Zcash Foundation in New York, and Carlos Acevedo, who is at Brave now, but he ran a program with Zcash in the Bronx when he was a teacher there. And then, yeah, it was really cool to meet like Peter Van Valkenburg in DC and Ian Myers, who, thought of using zero knowledge proofs. Or he was really motivated to add privacy to Bitcoin because I feel like he, like me, also doesn't want to see a world where transparent cryptocurrencies become the norm. And so
It's
his
not good, is it?
PhD, what's that?
That's not good, is it? Trying to.
Yeah, yeah. So Ian was cool because he had that like early motivation, and as a PhD student, he started working on zero knowledge proofs over Bitcoin, which later became um, zero cash and um, zero coin, zero cash, Zcash. Um, and then yeah, I'd say the other cool experience. So we got to go back to Colorado and meet Eric Voorhees and Vitalik. And um, Vitalik also similarly much taller than I expected. He's pretty tall, and it was funny when Vitalik and Zuko were coming to film in the morning at the Airbnb we had got in Colorado. The second time we went there, apparently, like Zuko was walking up to the Airbnb and somebody like ran up to him and he's like, "Oh my God, is this the Zuko Wilcox?" And that turned out to be Vitalik. And so then they both walked up together. I was like, "Damn, this is crazy!" Like Vitalik and Zuko. Um, and then yeah, um, so that was really awesome that Vitalik took the time. Like he was there like a whole day with us, which is really thankful for that.
Yeah.
And then Eric Voorhees like invited us to his party that night at ETH Denver, a shapeshift party. So we got to go like up in the mountains in Golden and Colorado and crazy like huge snowstorm that night. So like buses were going off the road, like people weren't able to get back and forth. And it was in this like big place up in the mountains that was just like overlooking the Rockies and everything. So that was awesome. And then like the last, perhaps the craziest one is getting to talk to Ed Snowden. Um, and so like the way that all went down was like when we were interviewing Zuko the first time, he literally on camera like had like I guess you see in the second video, he had gotten a message from Ed, um, who at the time we did not know as John Doverton, because Zuko had like messaged him the night before, asking if it was okay if he could, say that Ed was the sixth member of the first ceremony helping set up Zcash in the first place, because Halo upgrade was about to make trusted setups obsolete, so there's no longer like just one less thing to need to worry about, keeping Ed's privacy. And also at the time, initially Ed was in a much more volatile situation after having left the US, and over time maybe settled into hopefully slightly less precarious position. So it was time to like let go of the last secret of Zcash. And so he had messaged Ed, and Ed did say while we were filming, like Zuko checked his messages, and Ed had said, "Yes, it's okay. I think you can tell people as long as you say it was for the public interest, and I didn't was had no stake, wasn't paid or anything. You can tell people." And so like we got that like during our interview with Zuko totally unexpectedly, and then um, which was pretty cool. And then um, so we were like, okay, that's cool, but it's not doesn't necessarily fit into the first video. So we were like, let's. And then I think Zuko had uh, like asked Ed and told him what we were doing to make a video about the Halo upgrade, and if he would like to sort of be interviewed for it and to kind of complete the story of like the trusted setup, which was like kind of a famous piece of lore. And Radiolab, NPR had stuff about it, and it was super badass, like crypto ceremony. And then now it's like full circle, like Shanbo has cracked the way to like not need trusted setups, and it's way simpler now, and it's also way better for the future in terms of scalability and everything. And we can finally also let go of this last person who participated. And I think Ed said it sounds okay with him, or something like that, or sounds good. And we had like sent Ed a link of a draft of the video without the ending. So it was like, this is the second video. It's like, and initially we just had Zuko saying that it, breaking who it was, and then we are like, left the ending like there it is, and we're like, you see how you could fill that in, Ed? And so he said, yeah, and then we had to find a time to meet with him, and he's a super busy guy, and eventually Zuko just recommended, he's like, why don't you just pick a time and date, and just say that you can either like please come if you can or whatever, and then just see if he can. And so we were like, okay, we're gonna pick whatever time it was, and if you can show up, that'd be great. And then like the morning of, basically, Ed gave the thumbs up, and I was all like paranoid because I'm like, oh, this is the world's best security expert. Like, I got to make sure my OPSEC is good. Don't want him to think we're slouches, and so we used Jitsi, and I generated like the most unnecessarily long password for the meeting to send to Ed to be able to join, and which is probably all comical now because he speaks so much on like podcasts and everything that it's not a big deal. And so yeah, and then he like, because I'm like a big um, like believer in what Ed stands for, and this sort of like super courageous person who saw something that was really wrong at a societal systematic level, and instead of hoping for others to do something about it, he did it himself and risked everything for it. But it didn't matter because consequences be damned. Like, this is more important because I believe in the original intent of the what the United States stand for, and this is not it. Yada yada. So I was like reading his biography at the time, um, and everything. And so yeah, then when the meeting time came and he popped on the screen, that was pretty incredible. Like, Natasha and I were both interviewing him. We're pretty like, we were like So pretty nervous. Let's put it that way. We had like 4 different laptops open, like recording it to make sure we didn't miss anything, and we had like the camera recording one of the laptops to make sure it was on the camera too. And then at the end of the day, he's like, "Oh, by the way, I like recorded myself just in case we lose it, and I can send you that." And so he like sent us a link to that, and like that's the actual recording we wound up using because it was just his own camera, so it was the highest quality. Um, but yeah, like I got to ask him 3 questions. The first one's about John Dobbertin ceremony, and he gave the best possible answer to that question. Um, and that's basically what we put at the end of the second video. And it gives me chills just thinking about it because of what he says at the end. So if you haven't seen that video, check out that second video, the interview at the end of that. It's so good. And then 2 more questions, which he answered at length, really eloquently, like, because he's like the best. Privacy is really hard to communicate. Like, people spend a long time trying to communicate privacy because it's like so fundamental, so big. And he's like the world's foremost. So like I asked him a question about privacy, and he's like, I think a lot of people get confused about privacy. Meaning like my question was a probably confused question about privacy, but he's like, here's what it really is about. And he goes on, and so that was really great, and really thankful that he did that. And yeah, so like it was a great to meet all these interviewees and all the people like in the Zcash community. Very inspiring group of people, and very thankful for them to have taken the time to talk with us. And I look forward to putting the other 95% of the footage we collected into videos in the future. Because, yeah, we only used a fraction so far, so it's great that we have a lot in reserve.
Yeah, because I mean, that content in itself, like, it's just going to provide so much educational value for people who are trying to learn about Zcash, whether that's people who are new to the ecosystem, whether that's people who are in different crypto communities. I think that, yeah, those videos are going to be super valuable. And I think already, I think they've been incredibly valuable, all of them that have come out, like on social media, YouTube, etc. I don't like, there's some things that I feel like it's really hard to quantify from like a monetary perspective. And I feel like these are those things.
Right, yeah. I appreciate you saying that. It's because we really had a blast. It's like sometimes there's like 2 types of fun. There's like type 1 fun where it's fun in the moment, and type 2 fun where it's fun to talk about after. And a lot of it was type 2 fun. Like we were in this room weekends, till 1, 2 in the morning. Like it was ungodly amount of time. Um, and and then yeah, like the thing about making the videos and everything and putting all these out there, it's like at a certain point, it's like gets back to the whole like public good type thing with Zcash and the funding mechanism. Like the main point is really to like provide education, which itself is like a public good. It's like anybody, it's like knowledge. Like anybody can use it, nobody can consume all of it, and it helps everybody. Um, so like there's a sake of doing the videos that I'm attracted to, of like making them as good as possible and like consolidating out all this footage into new videos to like convey the messages as good as possible, just for the pure sake of like um, being like the best possible thing for the public um, to like learn. Like, yeah, these are not just for Zcash. Like, you could learn. Like, a lot of the people who watched the first video were like, "That's the best explanation I've ever heard of for like any crypto and like blockchain or whatever." Even like enthusiasts were saying that like they were telling, they're telling their family members about what they're doing, and the family members just never got it until they were able to show them that video. Like that's the best possible thing that we look for is that people actually learn something from the video, whether or not um, it ultimately precisely leads to like um, mega Zcash adoption or whatever. Um, it's like the videos themselves can teach people something they hadn't learned before and make them feel like these things are not beyond their understanding is what motivates me more than anything.
Yeah, that's honestly, like, to hear that, it's like it kind of puts it all in perspective. And this is gonna sound really weird, but the thought that just came to my head is like, if this was all for naught, right? And the project Zcash itself didn't succeed, which I don't think is going to happen. You know, have I'm betting on Zcash. But let's say it goes in the other direction that we don't foresee happening. Like, these types of materials are going to be able to live on and assist other people and other ecosystems, and they're going to be able to tell stories that are really, really important to the foundation of the industry as a whole, not just specifically to Zcash.
Right. Yeah, I mean the yeah, it's important to document these things because what Zcash is doing and what a lot of crypto is doing is like sometimes I forget or just like things just go so fast in today's world, but it's like we're living in a pretty consequential era and you know cryptocurrency was just invented, like a blink of an eye in the span of things, um, and zero knowledge proofs were the first time ever used in Zcash, and like all the human ingenuity and problem solving and like belief in in the project and doing something good for humanity, and also the technology enabling so many other people to use zero knowledge proofs for a variety of purposes like scaling or privacy, um, identity, etc. So it's like these things are really important to document for their own sake, and permanent, things that stand the test of time uses. And um, yeah, I mean, it would be great if I think one thing that people get sometimes like confused about when I talk about Zcash Media is like looking at other cryptos and not necessarily seeing like the exact same thing of like these kind of like film quality videos, because like that just happens to be our forte. Like I can write and do all these things, but it's like this is a film production studio and we're just trying to use the strengths we happen to have to contribute to this like meaningful project. And they're like, well, other cryptos don't necessarily have that, as well. It's like, well, they don't either have zero knowledge proofs too. It's like there's no reason for us not to make these things that um, other people don't have. It's just a unique circumstance that we got attracted to this thing. And I mean, Ethereum is making a full length feature, which they're still like filming. They've been working on it for years,
Yeah.
almost a year or two now. So I do think people have the same idea and do see it like as a worthy thing to like really put into a strong medium.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing is trying to figure out, what's the end goal? Like, and who are you trying to reach as a protocol? I think when people, let's use Ethereum for example. Like, Ethereum is really, really dependent on independent organizations funded by, VCs or other mechanisms to build things on Ethereum, right? Like, it has this ethos that it's very developer friendly, and the success of the projects that build on Ethereum are going to lead to the success of Ethereum. The success of layer twos lead to the success of Ethereum. And all of these different teams have different marketing strategies and different user education strategies that are, just completely, I think it's a completely different scenario as to where we're, trying to be, in the words of ECC, and I don't know how many people agree with this, but I think trying to be like the cash of the private cash of Web3, to be this real digital cash that can be used as a store of value and a medium of exchange. And if that's the case, you know, that user group and that potential user base is a lot larger than that of Ethereum, in my opinion, because Ethereum, while it probably has the same potential right now, is really focusing on educating people who are crypto native, who can really use these applications, who understand, who aren't scared of putting thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on Ethereum, right? And running different financial transactions there. Whereas to like Zcash can be someone just holding $500 to just have a safe little cash under the mattress type thing, or it can be someone who has the majority of their net worth. So I think the immediate target of potential like users out there is a lot bigger for Zcash, and I think with that comes the need for these types of education materials that need to be of a high quality to reach the audiences that we want to reach.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I would say Zcash is like, I think we have to be careful. Like, um, the Zcash right now is kind of a drop-in replacement for Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is very reliant on spreading the word, grassroots efforts. That's how it grows, is by people using it, more people using it, not necessarily people creating things on it that will bring in um, more users. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like Ethereum has, I don't really know Ethereum history. I mean, I read like Laura Shin's book on Ethereum and everything. It's kind of seemed to, due to the fact that it is like a platform, that just opens up all sort of creativity. I mean,
Yep.
both good and bad. And so you get lots and lots of activity on it, um, from maybe a smaller number of people or like coders or whatever, and that attracts people. And then price performance also attracts people. I think Zcash um, will also get there, like with maybe more integration into the Cosmos ecosystem, because I do think in order to be a cache for Web3, you also have to be able to use it in
Yep.
places, and that's like the number one thing. Like everybody can be so down with the mission, they can be highly educated about why privacy is good. You can have an army of people that are down with like the fact that this is good. And then, if they can't use, even if the wallets are working fine, like you have to have vendors that accept it. And then, so yeah, I think it'll be really important to see like how can it get in the game with like some of the crypto native applications, because it's like Ethereum, nobody is trying to, necessarily argue for the fact that you should be paying with Ethereum at the grocery store. um, they just have created their own economy out of thin air, due to having all these DeFi applications and NFT applications, and therefore it has had a new market come out of nowhere, that people had to believe in to create, and then it has value even if like Ethereum never left its own ecosystem. It like still has value, whereas like Zcash, Bitcoin, other things are really dependent on interoperability to see the fruits of their labor. And so I hope that we continue to add more places to use Zcash and to interact more easily with, other what other people are building, and like find ways to build ways to make it easier to go back and forth between Zcash, because I think a lot of people really do love having their assets in a sort of like sovereign way, in a private way, and like a shielded pool. Like there's tons of benefits for that. The problem is, can they actually then, use it in the places they want to use it? Because at a certain point, it's a trade off. Like I can have all the privacy I want in the world, but am I going to give up my ability to participate in, DeFi NFTs, or paying for, chocolate or whatever to have this perfect privacy? Like
Yeah,
probably not.
that's a really it's a really important point. I'm friends with the Railgun guys, pretty good friends with them, and we have this conversation. And I was like, just learning about Railgun. I'm like, obviously, it's probably not as private as if you held Zach in the shielded pool. They're like, no, it's not, right? Like, privacy is not binary, as Josh Swihart said before. It's like let's say, I don't, these are probably incorrect scores, but let's say it's out of 100 and Zcash is like 99, right? 99 out of 100 for privacy score, and the Railgun might be like 85, and the Monero might be like 90, and like Bitcoin's like, if you use Bitcoin privately and you know how to do it well, it might be like 75, right? Like they're just different scores, right? And I think people are willing to accept a weaker privacy set as long as it's good enough, because like you got to think people's counterparty risk probably isn't chain analytics companies. I heard that actually a Bitcoiner said that recently. They were like, you don't really need to use, if you know how to use Bitcoin privately, you don't need to use, Monero. They're referencing Monero, like you don't need to use Monero or Zcash because your privacy is good enough. Like you're not running away from chain analytics companies. And I understand that argument, but I think people realistically need to understand that the whole point of this is to opt out. And are you you're and I would agree Bitcoin is a way to opt out. I'm not saying it's not, but like to opt out with maximal security. I'm not saying put everything in a shielded asset, but I would say a relatively good portion of whatever you have, being in a shielded asset, if you're willing to withstand the volatility, is a really good step in that direction.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it just made me think. So let's say there are people whose counterparty is chain analytics companies. Um, they're in a state where what they're doing is illegal, and the state has partnered with an analytics company, or I'm sure eventually these analytics companies will just be like subscriptions where anybody can buy one. And
Well, yeah, you can get a Nansen account. I can buy a
right,
Nansen account for like what? I mean, I can afford it. I looked at it; it wasn't expensive enough. I could buy it if I wanted to.
yeah, like eventually, you know, the ability to analyze complex things on, I mean, it's like Google, like um, manually looking and finding the search results for Google, or like going to the library or whatever is like impossible. But then somebody comes along with something that makes it easy. Like you'll be able to search things on transparent blockchains like pretty easily through a service that some genius like invented and distributed. Um, but let's say like even nowadays, like you're in a state where like your actions are illegal. Like let's say you're homosexual, or let's say you're a dissident, or let's say abortion, or whatever, or like there's things that are like normal in some states and not normal in the other. So I guess I'm just saying, like, let's say you're doing something arbitrarily illegal, that's illegal in one state, but something totally not illegal in the United States or whatever. So that person is worried about what their um, you know chain analytics company is able to dig up on them, um, and but they want to use Zcash to be able to pay for things freely, get a ticket on a train without um, having to um, use a credit card to then get their background checked and see if they're going to get that ticket on the train or whatever, that type of thing. Um, so they can use Zcash for that. It's like, is that good enough? Like, the thing is that the concept of privacy only works when everybody, or works best when everybody has it. And so there may be people on the other side of the earth who are living in the most free society where nobody looks at anybody else's private information. They can do whatever they want. But by holding and using Zec, they are actually strengthening the privacy that the person on the other side of the world needs to just do basic things. And so, even though there's lots of people whose counterparties are not the chain analytics companies, or they can do whatever they want in their society, um, they nonetheless could use Zcash just as easily as they're using Bitcoin, because Zcash is actually going to be much better as a whole for society because you provide a larger anonymity set. And the whole goal with privacy is that everybody going through the doors looks identical, so you can't discriminate them. Like that's how Zcash works. Each transaction looks identical, so if they're all identical, you can't discriminate. And that just has like so many benefits for our society of like non-discrimination everyday activities, um, which is like a huge problem that we're trying to solve with like social means, trying to make sure people don't get discriminated against or everybody has equal opportunity. But if you just make people's things private, transactions private, that just solves the problem right there. So it's like the people who don't necessarily need the privacy are nonetheless still our allies and still an audience, because if they're taught that this is actually a better currency for our entire society, they might be willing to use it even if they themselves don't necessarily need it. So that's kind of what made me think of when talking about like who are we trying to reach and target audience. It's like not everybody needs 100% privacy. That's true. You may live in a free society, but not everybody has that luxury, and you can actually like use Zcash and not give up your own convenience while also adding privacy protection for those who need it most. Um, so that's kind of the way I think about it, as to talking to somebody who's like, why do I need privacy? It's like, granted, yeah, you may not, but you could be helping others by using this. It's like running a Tor node or whatever.
That's
Yeah.
that's probably one of the best explanations I've heard, actually, to be fair. Um, yeah, I think contributing to like a greater good. I think people, I think we're getting to a part. I think it was Fyodor Dostoevsky that said this. Like, you give everybody enough cake and time to like do whatever they want, they'll end up tearing the world down, right? And I think we're getting to that point in society where, especially in the West, where society has become so good, and a lot of us, not everyone, obviously, and we have so much access to information and to wealth and different things. And when there's a little bit of a crack in the system, it kind of all starts to implode, which I think is happening right now. I think there's starting to be some cracks in the system, and it's starting to, people are kind of getting panicky and starting to lose it a little bit, myself included. And we're like, what the hell's going on? And I think in those types of situations, like having that opportunity to be a part of something where you can opt into that, you can opt out of the traditional system, opt into the system that has like a greater good around it, I think is a really compelling message. Um, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
just kind of like, where does that leave? We're coming up on a couple hours here, so maybe closing on this question, but like, where does that leave the future of Zcash in your opinion? Like, how do we, do we need these technical developments? Do we need interoperability? Do we need, programmability on the layer one to be a thing to get all the people in the world to use Zcash? Or is this something that we have to be actively really kind of going for right now? Like, I kind of feel like we're entering a bear market. I think we crashed like 10% today. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, especially with trad markets and how they're acting. Is this like the
Right.
time to kind of go for it, or do you think there needs to be technical development? Like, what's the future in the next 2 years look like for you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing is like Zcash never stops building. That's another thing that attracted us to Zcash is never stop building, never stop innovating. Um, the developers of Zcash are some of the most honorable, persevering people um, on the planet, in my mind. Um, so absolutely, no more technical. People. The thing about Zcash is like the to a degree, like the institutions that support it allow the most important people to ride out that volatility. Like it is helpful to have some normal infrastructure imported from the normal world, like a nonprofit Zcash Foundation and a nonprofit Bootstrap Foundation and a for-profit electric coin company. Those allow people to ride out volatility and keep working. Um, and absolutely, it needs to improve scalability on layer one. Like right now, it's a bottleneck, right? Um, all the wallets are, you know, um, stuck with the large increase in the blockchain size. So, like, recursion and everything hopefully will reduce the amount of data that's stored on chain, which will help in the long run. And then developments around syncing algorithms and all these sorts of things have to occur. Otherwise, we're capped at so many transactions. We'll never fulfill the big promise of being a currency for the world. And, Nate Wilcox said something to me that I think is very interesting. He said that privacy and scalability are linked, that when you don't have to have every node in the network checking every single thing, you can do many more things. So it's like that's why cash is extremely scalable, physical cash. Like there's infinite number of cash transactions that can occur because nobody has to check every single transaction. The token itself is what is good. Whereas like credit cards and everything else, so you're going to hit a bottleneck due to technology. So it's like privacy and scalability are linked, and coming up with ways in Zcash to make it so that there's less things that need to be checked or more things that can be like put together into one proof will unlock the doors to scalability in ways that like transparent systems may never have the opportunity for, no matter how much you shard the data or whatever. So privacy and scalability, I think, are linked concepts that I'm excited to see where that develops. Um, and then yeah, interoperability with Cosmos, I think, or whatever they wind up doing, um, is really really important. And I think everybody knows this. Like all the people know need to keep building, and I think that in the next 2 years, like also need to build out like the soft infrastructure, like all the people that are like you and me, they're going to be like doing podcasts or writing stuff or thinking about this stuff in their spare time, and are going to be able to bring on other people and kind of like, because like when the bear market or like bull market comes around and attention is back, like you want everything in place to like succeed and point all these eyes that are now easily coming your way, whereas you had to fight for them during the bear market, to point them to the materials and the technology of your thing that you think is like best for the world and best in the industry and yada yada. So um, I think it is the time to like not do like huge glitzy, attention grabbing campaigns, but I do think it is the time to deliver and create the very high value materials that can be distributed at any point, and also recruit people. Like people are the number one strength of Zcash. Like not the technology, not um, whatever else. It's the people that matter the most. And I think Zcash desperately needs more good people. It's very, very small, and the people that do work on it are absolute heroes. But I think it needs many more people to help it truly grow. And so recruiting people now and training them, because there's so much you have to be caught up on in Zcash. Like we're so used to it, but we can just speak the lingo of trusted setup or Halo or whatever, ZKPs, Y wallet. Like people just know we know what you're saying, but like people that are coming in that are going to help us, they need a long time to be caught up and be educated. And then when the attention comes back, to be able to um, bring in people in like a educated manner. Um, so yeah, it's preparation time. Like I certainly think it's kind of a make or break period, this next section. I think a lot of things need to be worked out. And yeah, absolutely. I'm more motivated than ever to keep doing the work. And I think, yeah, I think it'll be great to build with people and work with people during a bear market. Like prices are not good, but prices come back. Um, and like this is where the stuff happens that you wish you would have done in the future. So no better time than the present.
I would completely agree with that, and I think that's a great way to kind of close this up. David, thank you so much for your time, and this has been one this is something I really enjoyed. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate you taking all the time and sharing all these thoughts and sharing these experiences. And yeah, I'm really excited to keep building, like you just said, keep building in this market and
Yeah, well, I really
take this thing in
appreciate.
3 years, see how it goes in 3 years.
Yeah, it's not that long, and I really appreciate what you're doing. Takes a lot of time. It's a passion project, and you've done it well. And I hope you continue doing it. And this is just the beginning, you know.
I would agree with that. Well, yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, man.